back for another episode. A very special episode today because we're starting a new mini-series on the channel. What does that mean? Good question, I'm glad you asked. The new mini-series is going to be all for the home bartender. Does that mean if you're a bartender you should switch off now? Well, I hope not, but maybe. The home bartender needs a little bit of help. I've had a lot of questions recently about where to get started, what equipment to buy, what spirits to buy, what glassware to buy, how to even make drinks, design them. From start to finish, it's quite a long conversation, too long for one video anyway. So I thought we'd split it up into 5 or 6 neat chunks so we can walk you through what you need to buy, how to use the equipment, and then what ingredients would be good to get you making your first few cocktails. Trust me, it's worth watching from start to finish because we're going to go through the entire process, and at the end you'll have some home syrups made, you'll have a good bottle collection, and obviously you'll have some of this equipment that you see in front of you, maybe even one of these, which we will be selling very soon. Without further ado, I'm just going to jump into it. You've all got busy lives, as do I. So let's get through all this equipment. We'll tell you exactly what it is, what you use it for, and any tips and tricks that I've got along the way. Not everything in front of you I would recommend. There's some things that, I'll be honest, I wouldn't recommend. We'll go through the reasons why I would recommend something and why I might shy away from it throughout the video. Ignore the milk punch. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. You may have heard of the LA Lakers, but have you heard of the LA Shakers? Probably not, because I've only just made it up. On one side of the ring, we've got a little known friend called the Cobbler Shaker. And here, we've got the Boston Shaker, which is quite simple, 2-piece contraction with a small metal tin and a larger metal tin. They don't have to be metal. Sometimes you get glass, bigger tins or smaller tins. It's normally the smaller tin, that's glass, I think. So this is a Boston Shaker. This is a Cobbler. But why would you pick Cobbler or why would you pick Boston? Let's get into it. First off, I'm going to start with the Cobbler. What this is quite simply a 3-piece shaker. You've got your tin in which you load your ingredients. You've then got your inbuilt strainer, which allows some small ice pieces to pass through, which is quite common in the Japanese cocktail scene. They like the small shards of ice on top of the drink, whereas the Western scene tends to prefer more of a double strain, but it's definitely good enough for the home use anyway. Really simple, good strainer. And then the third piece is what I like to call the thimble. The third piece is the nub cap. The bullet head, Queen Victoria's crown, and this is the final piece of the 1, 2, 3-piece shaker, and it's the bane of most professional bartenders' life. And the reason why you don't tend to see Cobbler shakers out and about too much, especially here in the UK. The reason why it's a bit of a pain in the arse is because of a little thing we like to call physics. This obviously is made of metal. When metal is put under heat, metal expands. Conversely, when ice is in the shaker, temperatures plummet. When temperatures plummet, metal contracts. When this contracts, it becomes ever so tight, which means this little boy doesn't want to come off. If you're in a home bar scenario and you're using this, don't get me wrong, it'll do a job, it'll do completely fine, but you might get some points where you think, I cannot get this lid off for the life of me. It's not the crisis you think it is. There's a quick way around this. It might not be what you want, but if you're in a kitchen, because where else are you making drinks, it's weird to make them anywhere else, just run this under even your cold tap will give it enough to expand and pop it off. If you're in a rush, hot tap, but you risk warming up the cocktail slightly then, especially when you're going to be pouring through the same slot anyway, so you don't really want to heat this up too much. So for me, it's a good option. For a home bartender, I wouldn't shy away from a Cobbler necessarily, but I wouldn't reach out for it straight away. If it's all you've got, you can make brilliant cocktails with it, that is for sure. But if you want to make your life a little bit easier and maybe take it one step further while still being a home bartender and a beginner, I'd probably put the Cobbler away and go for this fella here. This fella here is the Boston Shaker. And as I said, it's a 2-part shaker. Tin on tin is my preference. If you want to go for tin on glass, that's fine too. A lot of people start with tin on glass. What I've seen is a lot of home bartending sets actually sell tin on glass, which is fine. It works. One slight issue I used to find personally with the tin on glass Boston shaker is the seal isn't always great. When you use tin on tin, obviously physics, the metal contracts, everything's good to go, and we get this really nice seal. You can shake the cocktail well. When you've got tin on glass, it's slightly different. You're not always going to get a really tight seal, and you may start to doubt your ability when shaking a cocktail, when in reality, it was a losing game from the start. One thing I would say about the Boston shaker though, if you're doing a dry shake and the shaker is warm, brace yourself. The same way the cold temperatures make the shaker contract, when you're shaking without ice, you're building pressure inside the container. This pressure and heat makes this liquid want to come out. It can only go one way, so make sure you've got a really good grip and a good seal on that dry shake, otherwise your cocktail's not going to be in the glass and it might be on your sealing, which, if that's how you want to live your life, fine, but I doubt it is. And there's easy ways to get cocktails on sealings, trust me. When you seal a Boston shaker, it is going to be slightly different from a cobbler. Obviously, a cobbler just gets put together, it's quite self-explanatory. Bostons, there's a bit of misinformation out there. What you don't want is your Boston shaker to ever look like that. That's not good. That's going to make a poor seal, it's going to risk leaks, and it's going to potentially be a pain in the arse to get the shaker out. What you want is a straight line running along the back, similar to that. If you've got this straight line, when it comes to breaking the seal, you can either squeeze and she's free, or you can just give it a nice whack and we're open. For that reason, I do prefer the Boston shaker. You may be asking me though, David, how do you strain a Boston shaker? That's got it inbuilt in this. Well, it doesn't. It's a perfect segue to talk about Hawthorne strainers and maybe even a little julep strainer. So when your cocktail is in your Boston shaker ready to be strained, you've got a couple of options. I love a trusty little Hawthorne. The reason for the Hawthorne being the choice for many is the fact that it sits comfortably over the top of the Boston and you can push the gate to try and get some of the big bits out when you're doing a drink. It's not the only type of Hawthorne. You also have ones like this, which can double as a julep strainer, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And these sit deeper into the Boston shaker and give the same type of strain. So these Hawthorne shakers do not have inbuilt strainers. Because of that, you'll see many bartenders use a small like tea strainer, sieve, or as we all tend to call them, just double strainers. These make life much easier to get rid of those finer particulates. A little while back we made a picante, which we can pop somewhere, and for a drink like that with the chili and the coriander, you need to double strain to make sure you're not getting any bits in, and a nice little double strain works a treat. But some rogue people out there can't be arsed using these, and you know what, fair enough. If you want bitty cocktails, have bitty cocktails, but there's a solution for you cowboys out there in these. It's a relatively new product that I haven't had for a long while. Just like the other Hawthorne strainers, it sits on top of your Boston shaker, but it fits on a little bit more snug. The gate then can be pushed down, so the only liquid can pass through this central reservation here, just like the A49. This central area is actually an inbuilt strainer. So you are effectively doing a single strain and it's coming out as a double strain. It's a really nice product actually. I was kindly gifted this and unfortunately cannot for the life of me remember who gifted it to me. This is a great option for the cowboys out there who can't be asked to double straining. I've never used it because I'm not a cowboy. Unlucky on you cowboys. There is one more type of strainer. But to talk about that, first we have to address the elephant in the room, or the milk punch in the glass. Here is the elephant in the room. This is a very milky concoction, which has been sat there now for about 10 minutes or so. We made it just before the video, and as you can see, it's very curdled. It's in a mixing glass, and that is the talk of the conversation here. What I want you to do for me is use your brilliant imagination as a viewer and picture this without any liquid in it. For the purposes of this video, there's nothing in this, just completely ignore it. This is a sleek, quite classy mixing glass. You can get different types. I've got a few, which I probably should have used instead of this one, but celery. And they are obviously for mixing. What you do with these is you put your ingredients in, you stir them with a bar spoon, and then once you've stirred this down, you can use your other strainer. The julep strainer is great for not only being a garnish on a mint julep and pop a bit of mint in, although no one ever does that anymore. The julep strainer is great for stirred drinks. I tend to use this just because it has the little notch that sits in the glass. I don't really want to dunk this in the milk, so you'll have to just imagine that. Alternatively, you can use a proper julep strainer. Again, I'm hoping that you're using your imagination quite well to picture that empty. Whilst you're doing that, picture this to be a little bit bigger, or for my hands to be a bit smaller, whichever is easier for you to imagine. This is actually a spoon used for reverse certification, and it looks a little bit like a julep, sort of. If you Google julep strainers and get something that looks a little bit like this, it's probably right. Obviously, for stirred drinks, you're going to need something to stir them with. These are, I'll be honest, a couple of extra large bar spoons. You don't need 12 or 16 inches in your bar spoon. Any will do the trick. A few things to note is that most bar spoons have this sort of angled end on them. These tend to all measure around 5mm. So if you're going to do a little bit of measuring and you need 5mm in a pinch, when you see someone say, oh, I'll just put a bar spoon of this in, it's quite synonymous with 5mm. A few of them will have different ends. These are 2 teardrops. These are weighted to give you a nice stir. Some have a little fork, which will go for grabbing a maraschino cherry, and some may have even a round base, which help with layering on top of a cocktail. They are quite fun. I've got this brass one that I've used for quite a while now. I like this, and also this little silver fella does the job as well. Bar spoons are an essential part, probably one of the most boring tools, but I like them personally. Essential for a stirred cocktail, but you may be thinking, well, how do I get the right measurements? For measuring your spirits, you're going to need a spirit measure, which colloquially are known as jiggers. So these are a good range actually of jiggers. So these are your spirit measures and how you're going to make sure every cocktail you make is accurate. Don't free pour. Free pouring is for weirdos. Don't get me wrong, some people are brilliant at getting a few mil close, and they might be within a few mil most of the time, and if they're on camera and they're getting tested and you see people on Instagram who are always pouring perfect free pours, I'm going to let you in a little secret and pull the curtain away. 9 times out of 10, it's shite. They're deleting the ones that don't work and they're only posting the successes. Instagram is a lie. Take it from someone who's nearly got 300,000 followers. Always use jiggers. If you want your cocktails to be spot on, you can't go wrong with them. I don't really care which one you use, but I will go through the 3 in my hands now. So we've got my favourite, what I like to call the grandad. This is the beauty of a jigger. It's got a lot of increments on it. It's got mil if you're normal, and it's got ounces if you're American. And if you want to go even more freaky, it's got tablespoons, because you never know when a baker might need a jigger. Really good piece of kit. It's what I use for everything. Is it the flashiest piece of kit? No, but is it going to be accurate every time? Yes. Another good tip, the base of this one is a nice 7.5mm or 1/4 ounce for you Burmese or Liberians or Americans, which is quite good for your strong modifiers. We've got these 2 quite similar double-ended jiggers. So this is a 2 ounce, 1 ounce, as is this. They look very different. Why is that? This is a Japanese style jigger, and as with most things in the cocktail world, if the Japanese are doing it, it works well, to be honest. I used to use this for quite a long while before I got this more scientific little guy, and I really like it. It's got a nice weight to it, it's got an increment on the inside, again, which is good, and it's really reliable. It does the job, and I got quite a lot of use out of this. But I think, from a pure accuracy point of view, I think this is actually better than the bell jigger. The reason for that is because it's taller, which means you can see more specifically where the increments are. If you can see where your increments are more specifically, you're going to get a more accurate cocktail pull. Whereas, for example, on this, the difference between these increments is smaller because it's got a wider circumference to it, which is going to slightly impact the accuracy of your cocktails. Again, would I rather have these over a free pour? Obviously, because you can count as many numbers as you want. You're still pouring liquids, let's just do it accurately. Still a nice way to jigger. This is called a bell jigger for anyone who wants this nice little neat number. And you can always get these with a little handle on as well, which I thought is quite pretentious and a bit of a waste of money, if I'm being completely honest. If you're too good to hold your jigger, when you're making a cocktail, maybe just go and get a glass of wine. Yeah, we don't really want you there. Although I love wine. And if any wine companies want to sponsor me, I can easily change this video. So, from the jiggers and the Beaujolais, we are now going to be talking about some, not necessarily pieces of kit, but things that will make your life much easier as a home bartender. First one we're going to talk about here is this big fella, the muddler. Do you need a muddler? Probably not. There's a few options that you can use instead, but why would you ever need to use a muddler? If you're making an east side, for example, which is a twist on a gin sour, you're going to have cucumber in the bottom of your shaker. It's good to press down on that cucumber to release some of the flavour and muddle it, hence the name. Again, if you're making a clover club, you might decide you want to muddle the raspberries in with the syrup. You may want to muddle the raspberries in with the lemon juice first, or even with the gin if you're feeling fancy. The muddler is a really great tool to release some essential oils in peels as well, if you want to do a little muddle with peel. But is it essential in your home bar? No. You've probably got a rolling pin, and a rolling pin will work just fine. Anything that can fit inside your Boston shaker, cobbler shaker, or even Parisian shaker that we haven't touched on, but it's a cross between the two, you can use that as a muddler. This looks quite nice, admittedly, and it does the job, but what's more important, aesthetics or good quality cocktails. I know what my opinion is on that. I'm sure you do by now. If you prefer aesthetics over good quality cocktails, there is up this corner, I think, an X. You can just click that, because we don't want you here. I am joking, of course. I want everyone, because if we don't have everyone, we don't get paid. In my hand here, we've got what can only be described as the bartender's nunchucks. These are great. A Mexican elbow press, and it's not, funny enough, for beating Latino men in an arm wrestle. It is for squeezing your citrus. Predominantly limes and lemons, because they are the only things that fit in here. If you want to cut down a grapefruit and give it a squeeze, if you want to squeeze anything, to be fair, I've even squeezed tangerines in this and it didn't really work, but the world is your oyster. Once you've got the tools, I'm not going to tell you how to use them. Besides now, because I am obviously going to tell you, half a lemon, face down in here, you give it a squeeze, and look at these are holes at the bottom. This is where the juice comes out. You can then open, discard, reload, go again. You Americans out there will know the speed of reload when you're firing is essential. The Mexican elbow press is a fantastic piece of kit, but I didn't put it in the essentials. I didn't go over it initially, and it's because all it does, realistically, is squeeze your limes and your lemons. People have been squeezing lemons and limes long before these existed. These are great pieces of kit. These are great pieces of kit, but at the end of the day, they're only for squeezing your citrus, and there's many ways to squeeze citrus. Use your hands in a pinch, use a knife and on the knife and it'll drip down. You could even just muddle it and then strain it, like peel it and blend it. There's many ways to get juice out of a lemon. These are a great option, but not the only option, and it's why they're not in the essential list, like the cocktail shakers or the jiggers or the strainers. In a pinch, you could use a mason jar, I suppose, instead of a shaker, but I think you've got more control with the shaker, and it's a material difference, so I would always use them. Last but not least, I've only got a short thing to say on this. This is a Y peeler. Again, you can use a little knife, but I find this really good for getting consistent peels for your old fashions or any garnishes. Always have a Y peeler. I think this will step up your game, but again, not as essential as the others. If you want to use a little knife, use a little knife. Just be very careful, because children and sharp objects should not mix. So if you're in a family home, make sure you put them away afterwards. As a little bonus, I want to show you how to stir properly and how to shake properly, and you'll get better at this as you go along. I used to stir like an absolute tit, and now I can do it quite well. What we'll do though is I won't make any drinks today. Just to make life easier, I'll put some ice in the mixing glass and a little bit of water, which will show you how to use the bell jigger. I might use one of these because I always use the Old Faithful. So I'll do a little pour now, add a little bit of ice from a little ice scoop, which again, not necessary, but a nice piece of kit. And then I'll get to the stirring. So here we go. Just some rough and ready ice into the mixing glass for the example. And we'll add some water to that using a nice little bell jigger. Normally this would be filled up a little bit more. You usually have higher volume with your spirits, but it's just an example. I've not filled this with as much ice as I normally would, but worth noting, on the next video or a few videos down the line, we are going to be talking about ice and we'll talk to you about why ice is important and why more ice isn't actually a bad thing in a drink. Common misconception. But let's stir. What we do is we're getting the spoon facing inwards towards the centre of the glass and putting it in through the side. The trick is then to keep this pointing central no matter where you are on the circumference of the circle. By holding it between the two fingers and your thumb, you can get this nice rotational pattern, which is an easy twist. Do it slow to get used to it at first. It takes a while, but once you're used to it, you can build up speed, and it actually becomes quite easy at high speeds. You've got centrifugal force on your side. Everything's trying to pull into the centre of the glass. So the quicker you go, the easier it is. It's sort of like riding a bike. Quick taste. That is water. This is just an exemplary video. If I ever saw anyone doing this, I would have palpitations. But I'm going to do something that's going to make Matt, who's filming with me, very, very nervous. I'm now going to pour the contents of a mixing glass into a Boston shaker.
I feel sick.
You don't want to miss any bits of ice. Fill that with ice like you would with a normal drink, and then if you want to do a little bit of a shake, you don't need to spin tins. Tins at the ready, and now it's about shaking. As I said, you're looking for that straight line up one of the sides. It becomes really easy to do so. What I'll do is I'll keep some of the sound in as a shake, just so you can get used to the sound it makes when you are shaking. You see a lot of people who give it all the... You don't need to do that. You've got shoulders for a reason. They're not to be performed up here. We've grown out of the age where we were swinging on trees. We're now in the age where we can shake cocktails at a normal height. In and out of the chest, trying to gain quite a cyclical rotational pattern. You don't want the ice to be clattering hard against each side of the tins. You want it to just be kissing it as it moves through. Don't overfill your shaker either, because then the seal will be a little bit useless. The other thing is, time-wise, for shaking a cocktail, you only really want to shake for maybe 10 to 15 seconds at most. Sometimes you may shake without ice, unlike this one which has ice. The reason you do that is if you want to build up aeration without any dilution. Again, we'll talk about ice more in a follow-up video. We'll get into the reverse dry shake method during that video. All you need to know is that sometimes we shake without ice, then add ice, then shake. Sometimes we actually shake with ice, strain it out, and then give the cocktail a shake once again to get a nice fluffy bit of aeration, especially for those egg white cocktails. If you're vegan, there is some vegan alternatives. I've actually got a fat washed brandy that isn't vegan, but it is delicious and you are missing out. Don't get me wrong, this video is not going to blow you away with absolutely Harry Houdini-esque escapes from the cocktail shaker. It's pretty much give you the basics. With these, you can then hopefully progress into more advanced techniques. We always need the foundations and the building blocks, and although we've been a bit silly today by just making a video on equipment, it's actually really important for the home bartenders and people who want to make a start in the industry, whether it be at home or even just starting out in bars. Maybe you're a young student and you're thinking about pursuing this as a career. You need to know your foundations before anything. It's all well and good if you know the flavour combos, but if you can't shake a drink properly, then it's not ideal. This is a good start. In the next video, we'll be talking about ice, I think we've got scheduled, and then we're going to talk about glassware, how to serve your drinks. We might do a little video on garnishes as well. We'll also be doing how to build a back bar for the home. Do you need all the bottles that I have behind me? No, but I'll tell you which ones I would definitely recommend for the home bar. And then obviously we need to talk about some homemade ingredients, your simple syrups, your orgeats, even a few fruity syrups. But that is all to come in the next few weeks. For today, we're pretty much done. It's been an absolute pleasure. I hope you've got something out of this. I know I've had a lot of fun making it. Hopefully not too much fun. I hope some information has come across. Until next time, it has, as I said, been an absolute pleasure. If you want to see more content like this and you want to stay tuned for the rest of the series, the easiest way to do that is to subscribe to the YouTube channel and click the bell notification so you don't miss the next episode where, as I said, we'll be talking about the cold stuff, ice. Hard water in many ways, and it's going to be an absolute belter of an episode. If you want to see more content that, let's be honest, isn't really like this, but some of it is, you can always head over to Speakeasy UK on Instagram, where you can drop me a message and I will happily talk cocktails all day long. Very soon you'll be able to reach me on Bohemian Mixology as well, as we try and grow that page to a new level. I think that is all we've got time for today. So until next time, I am going to take my lovely chilled water, Sláinte.